everyone. My name is Katie. I'll do a little introduction later. And like later, I mean the next slide. But I wanted to just do a few housekeeping things just while we get started, so you all know. So the first is there is a 45 to second delay in when we talk and then when you all see it. We just want to let you all know that. We weren't aware of that when we attended sessions last week. So we just want to make sure you know that. So if you have questions, put them in the chat and we will answer them. But I think our general plan is we're just going to whiz through the presentation and then we'll have time at the end for all of your questions to come in. So you can sort of save them until the end and then do them then. So that's one note. So just please bear with us in any of the awkwardness that comes with having that minute delay. The second note we wanted to say is that we are doing the same presentation at the UAC conference on the 26th. So if you are planning on attending that conference and you had a session that you were deciding between, we just wanted to make that clear so you could attend that later if you wanted. So we are doing the same exact presentation, so you might see it at the UAC conference as well. Okay, I think that's everything. I think we can go ahead and get started. Right, Colleen, did I miss anything?
I think we're good.
We're good. Okay. So you are here to learn about the happiness advantage, applying positive psychology in advising and hopefully for yourself. So a little introduction. So my name is Katie Barnard. I'm an academic advising coordinator for the Department of Mechanical Engineering, and I love cats. I'll actually talk about my cat a little bit later in this presentation, so get excited about that. Both Colleen and I work in the College of Engineering, so I'll let Colleen go ahead and introduce herself.
Yeah, I'm good. Okay, hi, my name is Colleen Gilman, and I'm one of the academic advisors in the School of Computing, so I advise for a few different majors in that department. And I also love cats. I don't mention my cat in this presentation, but I decided to like plaster on some love of cats right there for you. And hopefully we all have some fun today.
Yes. Okay, awesome. And you might be wondering, like, how did we think of the happiness advantage? So it actually happened because Colleen brought the TED Talk that we put in our description. So hopefully you had a chance to watch it. If not, you could watch it after. It's very funny. Not necessary viewing for being prepared for this presentation, but so it's fine if you didn't see it. But she actually found that and brought that to a book club, which we do every week for the College of Engineering advisors, as a little presentation to talk about. I loved it. I thought it was so great, and so I asked her if she wanted to do a conference presentation with me. So I feel like having a presentation that you actually have to do really motivates you to read a book, even though Colleen and I finished the book like a week ago. But we did actually read the whole book, and we are ready to translate all of that book reading to knowledge for you all, for yourself and for advisors. No, Colleen, we're definitely ready, more than average, significantly yes. Above average.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anything else you wanted to mention about the presentation, Colleen, or how we found this topic?
I brought it to book club because it was actually part of an orientation for this really intensive selective grad program, and I was helping with that full day orientation, and it was hitting all the right spots for that particular cohort, and they were able to really talk about it very well. And I thought it was a great way to prep for like this graduate school journey. So when we were meeting up for our discussion group every week, it was the first semester of the full remote year, I guess, that happened. And I was like, I think we need to have this talk about this. I think it'll be really helpful for us as advisors, people, and for us to help our students kind of think more positively. So that was my idea for that.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. It was definitely like, okay, everything is feeling very like sort of down in the dumps and not so great. So how can we focus a little bit more on some positivity and planning, building that into our practice and into our lives. So we're just going to get started. Colleen's going to talk about learning outcomes.
That's right, I am. So learning outcomes always super easy to understand, right? We hope that you're able to utilize this information and apply it to your own advising style, but also how you interact with students as well to help build them up for their own happiness advantage journey, but we also hope that you leave this with some specific strategies on how you can do that. So we just don't leave you like blown in the wind. We'll be your sail in the wind. And I'll put it over to Katie for principle 1.
Yeah, so there are 7 principles that we are going to go through that are covered in this book. So this is a little picture of the book that we read. We're going to go through all 7 principles, sort of describe them, and then talk a little bit about how you can apply them or how we think that you can apply them. So the very first principle is actually just called the happiness advantage. So this is sort of the overarching principle for the book, sort of the guiding principle. And so we'll talk a little bit about it and how like broadly you can apply that. So very first is this quote from the book, which is really just the whole book. So it's the idea that happiness precedes important outcomes and indicators of thriving. Happiness actually causes success and achievement, not the other way around. So I think a lot of the messaging in our society is that once you work hard and then you achieve success, then you will be happy. But it's actually the opposite. And being happier will actually lead you to be more successful. All of the principles are going to feed into that. So that's really the outline of this first principle. Our brains are actually hardwired for this. So if you can train your brain to be more positive and to be happier, it will actually like lead to more success directly, right? So there's lots of tricks and tips we're going to teach you hopefully throughout the presentation to cover that. But our brains perform better on standardized tests, on recognizing opportunities, on like communicating with people. They actually perform better when they are primed to be positive than when they're negative or neutral. And even the smallest shot of positivity can give you a serious competitive edge. So it doesn't have to be like, oh, I had this absolutely fantastic week-long vacation at the beach and it was magical and I loved it. It can be just as important as like, oh, I had a 5-minute conversation with a coworker and that was great. So it doesn't have to be super giant positive things. It can be just little pieces of positivity can create more success in your life. So that's the first principle. Now we'll talk about how you can apply this. We've got lots of tips for you. The first one is prime yourself with positivity before a daunting task. So this can work for you and for your students. So if you're going to go into a stressful meeting, prime yourself with positivity. If your students are really stressing out about a test, help encourage them to use this tip. So this can be as simple as choosing something that gives you a little bit of happiness right before that. So if you want to watch your favorite Vine compilations, those really make you laugh. If you want to call a friend who can just give you a little bit of a hype up talk for 5 minutes before that exam, or watch some bloopers from your favorite TV show, whatever the little tiny thing is that you can do before something that's daunting to give you a little bit of happiness. I actually, right before this presentation, went over and like laid next to my cat, put my head on her little body, and she was purring, made me so happy. So I'm ready for this presentation. So just little things like that. Find something to look forward to. So even the act of thinking about something positive in the future can be really helpful. So this is something you can just ask. This could be your icebreaker question for all of your students who come into your office or into your Zoom room before your appointment. What are you looking forward to this week? What are you looking forward to this semester? It's a way you can prime your students to be positive. You can also do that with yourself, right? If you're having a stressful day, or every day before you log in and open your email, ask yourself, what is one thing I'm looking forward to today? And that can train your brain to be a little bit more positive. Infuse positivity into your surroundings. So I have my water bottle here. It's got all my favorite stickers on it. That makes me happy. I've got plants on my desk. That makes me happy. So actually getting your physical surroundings to give you little boosts of positivity can be really helpful in your office or in your work from home office. Have this recommendation for students as well. If they have, pictures of their family, have them put them in their binders or stickers on their water bottle, little things like that that are making their actual physical surroundings more positive. Especially if they're studying in a study room in the library, ask them to like find a space that's more positive for them, like what really makes them happy. A lot of students, lighting is a really big thing. So instead of having the harsh overhead lighting, maybe they can bring lamps, or you can even put lamps in some of the study spaces in your college if that works for you. So that's one other tip. Second tip, exercise a signature strength. So the book talked a lot about if you have a signature strength, it doesn't even have to be related to your work or for students to their studies. If you're a really great baker and you love making cookies, if you give really good advice, try and build that into your weekly routine so that you have an opportunity to exercise that signature strength. It will help you feel more positive, give you some of that positive energy, which will then spill over into success in your life. And keep in mind this Lesota line. So this is something that came up in a psychological study that was mentioned in the book, which you may have heard of this before. It takes 3 positive interactions to sort of override or equal out a negative interaction. So if you teach a class or supervise students, or even in your advising interactions, keep that in mind, that if you have to deliver bad news or deliver some constructive criticism, that you're doing it in a 3-to-1 ratio. So make sure you're saying 3 positive things for every 1 negative thing that you're saying. So this will come up a lot. So it's a very easy thing to just remember when you're having a one-on-one with your supervisor or somebody that you supervise, either way. Okay, that's a lot of tips for that one. I am going to pass it over to Colleen, who is going to talk about the fulcrum and the lever.
Hello again. If you're like me, you didn't know what a fulcrum was. It's actually that middle thing right there in the seesaw that actually creates the tilting of that teeter-totter part. So if you did know, awesome. If you didn't, you learned today with me. So that's a good thing to think of. The only thing I see with this is going to be me on the seesaw with my older sisters, and they just get off and they let me come crashing to the ground. So I have flashbacks of that whenever I think of seesaws. So this image does a really good job at depicting on how our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs can win out inside of our heads. It's really easy for negativity to get the upper hand, but in this case, the lower hand, right? It's the lower side that makes all the rules in a seesaw situation. So as that negativity grows, the seesaw tilts toward it, providing all the power to just massacre the other side, the happier side, much like what my sisters would do to me. So if you watch that TED Talk, it's only about 12 minutes later. It's quite a delight. I would suggest you do so. This was Sean's introduction to that, is this principle. But if you haven't watched it, I'll give you like this too long didn't read version of it. When they were kids, they were playing on their bunk bed while their parents are napping. His sister falls off and starts crying, and to avoid getting in trouble and getting his parents woken up and getting them in trouble, he decided to say, hey, I don't think anyone can land on all fours like that. I think you're a unicorn. And instead of crying and waking their parents and ensuing their wrath, she calms down and she's excited about her newfound life as a unicorn, and they start playing again. So what she was experiencing in that moment was a crisis. Fear and negativity was winning out. But with the swift realization of her fabulous new unicorn life, she was thrilled. The focus on her boo-boo dissipated and the happiness won out. And even though the pain was still there, that hadn't changed. But she was able to tilt that positive side back to give it the lower hand. So how do we know how to do that for ourselves, so we can guide our students to do the same? In order to overpower the weight of the negative side, we need to move that fulcrum closer to the happiness to allow our mental seesaw to tilt in the direction of that easier. We need to become our own unicorns, but how do we do this? We change our mindset. So some ways to do this is when being faced with a difficult challenge, you want to give yourself that give that positivity an immediate advantage by focusing on all the reasons you're going to succeed rather than the reasons you're going to fail. So the more likely you are to believe in your own abilities to succeed, the more likely it is to happen. So when students are panicking about an upcoming task or project, assignment, class, whatever, that they think they'll do poorly in, have them talk about times, specific times that they were successful or successful in something similar, and then ask very targeted questions. Guide them through that by saying, how did you achieve that success? What resources did you use? What specific steps did you take in order to get there? And then when they do mention any specifics, you want to transition that into how to apply that to that new situation so they feel better. But you don't want to just ask them to think about it. You want to be the one to help guide them and walk them through that thought process. I also have a little exercise from the book on here that I thought was really good, and I call that connecting myth to meaning, because there are certain things that we have to do in our lives that we don't want to do. For advisors, that could be some sort of menial task that has little meaning, and it's going to be the same for students in their schoolwork and after. So a good way that we can kind of connect that myth to their meaning is to do this physical exercise. And that's going to be on that next one. So if you wanted to take a screenshot of that, so you can have it for later, you can. But essentially you take a physical piece of paper, you make it horizontal, you write down that task that you're like, I don't want to do this. And you draw an arrow to the right, and at the end of the arrow, you want to see what purpose, what you will accomplish from doing that task. But if you still don't have that meaningful connection to it, you want to continue doing that process. And at the very end, you're going to have a connection, and you'll be able to literally see the connection between that task you're not super stoked on doing with what you are excited about doing, or how is it going to help you do that. And that will actually allow additional motivation to continue on and provide a pick-me-up and in terms of their positive thinking. And that was my principle too. How did you ever play with that exercise, Katie, when you read about it?
I think that this is a great example for students in their homework, because they're like, I don't want to do my homework. Yes. Why do I have to do these 30 problems, these physics problems, or like these math problems? I'm not even going to use these as an engineer, like our students.
Yes. General.
Yeah. So having them do this activity when they're complaining about like, why do I have to take this class? Or especially like I'm thinking about students outside engineering, you know, if a psychology student or a political science student, I often hear colleagues in that area say like the students, they just don't want to complete their general education requirements in like the math or science, and our students don't want to complete writing 2010. They're like, I don't want to do my writing requirement. Having them do this activity with that, I think would be really cool.
I'm really excited to use it when we're like back in person, and I can be it's gonna be so exciting, but yeah. Alas, I will let you continue on.
Awesome. Okay, so the next principle is the Tetris effect. So this principle is all about how your brain gets stuck in certain ways and patterns of viewing the world. So the example he uses is somebody who plays Tetris all weekend long. If you've ever done this, if you've had like a marathon video game or a marathon like movie or video session or something like that, and then the next day he's talking about somebody who played Tetris all weekend and then went to the grocery store and couldn't stop thinking about like how the cereal boxes would all fit together in the cereal aisle or things like that. So this is all about how your brain gets stuck in a certain way and pattern of viewing the world, and how you can make it so that pattern is sort of default positivity or default optimism. So just as our brains can be wired in ways that hold us back, we can retrain them to scan for the good things in life, to help us see more possibility, to feel more energy, and to succeed at higher levels. So I do want to take a minute here and acknowledge something else he talks about. This principle is not about just ignoring everything that's bad in your life and only seeing the positive, right? I think that there have been opportunities or times, especially in the past, where people have overdone positivity and thinking like, oh, well, if you're just positive, it fixes everything. That's not at all what this principle is about or what he is saying. It's just that if you studies show that if you train your brain to sort of be a little bit more positive, you're going to see more opportunities and you're going to be able to capitalize on those opportunities. So it's not about ignoring the negative things. It's sort of not about rose-colored glasses, but he says rose-tinted glasses. Of course, you're still going to see the barriers that might come up or things that might not be going on well, but it wants you to train your brain so you can see those things, but that you're also like able to take advantage of all of those little positive things that are also popping up, and you're able to actually see those and capitalize on them. Whereas, you know, if you've ever been in a funk before, a negative funk before, where you're like, oh, this sucks, and then that sucks, and then this other thing sucks, and now everything sucks, right? It's just like a total spiral. And so it's about interrupting that or having it spiral the other way to be like, well, this is positive, and so that's positive, and like, oh, if that works out, then I can do that. And so it's sort of about that. So yeah, like I mentioned, it's training your brain to scan for opportunities instead of barriers, and then you can recognize them and take advantage of them. So that's all about the Tetris effect, how to create that, build that pattern of your brain seeing the opportunities and taking advantage of opportunities. So how can you do that? Applying the Tetris effect. Okay, bear with me. We have all heard this. Make a list of 3 good things in your life. We've all heard this, like, okay, it's time for gratitude journaling. It's time to make a list of things you're excited about. But the reason we've all heard about it is because it actually works. It really works. But I'm going to give you a couple tips to actually implement it, because I'm that person. I bought a gratitude journal. It's on my nightstand. I filled out 3 pages. So I've got some tips for you for actually how to make it work and how to get the repetition so that it actually happens in your life, right? So build a routine and or accountability around this list. So I want everybody in this presentation to do that. There's about 100 of you. I want you to now think about what is something you do every single day. Something you do every single day. Or maybe just on the weekdays, right, to make it a little bit easier. What is something that you do every single weekday? I used to do this. It worked really well for me when I would commute to work. I would take the bus. And so while I was waiting for the bus at my bus stop, I would think of 3 things that were going right in my life. If you take a walk every day, do that. If you drink your coffee or your tea every morning, before you drink your tea, make your list of 3 good things. Or build some accountability around this list. So there were a couple examples in the book about how if you live with a roommate or partner, you have a kid, maybe you decide to commit to do that with that person every day at dinner or something like that, or at breakfast. So whenever you're sitting down to breakfast with your family, you all share the 3 good things. So that's how you can do that for yourself. You can also immediately translate this to your students, right? So have your students do this at the beginning of every appointment. Just whenever you have a student appointment, just be like, hey, what are 3 good things that are going on with you today or over the past week? If you teach a class or if you supervise advisors, if you oversee a staff meeting, you can do it then as well. So have your students do this at the beginning of every appointment, the beginning of every class, something like that. You can build in the routine for other people around you. Okay? If you're not a list person, if you're a journaler, if you're a writer, instead of making a list of 3 good things, you can get the exact same benefits by journaling about 1 positive thing for 20 minutes every day. So that's an alternative option. I'm not a journaler. That's absolutely not anything I cannot. So I'm a list person. So I will be doing the list every day before I take the bus. The really important thing with this is practicing. You need to be able to build a new routine for you or for students that they're actually going to execute. The reason that the Tetris effect works is because you played 30 hours of Tetris over the weekend, right? And so that's why it's built into your brain. You need to translate those same 30 hours of Tetris into building this activity over a month. So I've got a couple good pieces of information for you. First, Colleen's going to talk a little bit later about how you can actually build habits and execute habits. So she'll give you some tips for actually getting this to happen. The second thing is you don't have to do this forever for it to have a lasting effect. There were some studies that showed if you do it for 21 days or for a month, if you can commit to doing this for a month. They did follow-up studies on those individuals 3 months later and 6 months later and a year later, and the positive effects were still there. So it's not like you have to make the daily list of 3 good things every day for the rest of your life. But if you can commit to doing it maybe every summer, you're going to do this, you're going to reinvigorate that, then that will be good. Or maybe it's your New Year's resolution every January. You do it every January, commit to it every January, and then you'll get the benefits all year, and then you can redo it every single year. So those are couple things. Okay, Colleen, anything else to add? Thoughts on the Tetris effect?
Man, this principal called me out constantly. Like I'm a natural pessimist. I'm not ashamed to be talking about this. So kind of trying to implement all of these positive changes, especially in the Tetris effect, have been really challenging for me. But that challenge and that kind of discomfort is allowing me to better express myself. So as someone who's a negative Nancy a lot and kind of does that spiral that she talked about earlier, this really does start helping. So it sounds like cringy, I get it, but it's good. So I'll give it a shot. And I'll just go on to principle 4. As you can probably see, I'm a visual person. I don't have too many texts, so please don't be upset with me. But principle 4 is following up. So right here we have a mental map about nap time, my favorite activity in the world. So to put things into action in our lives, we have to first arrive to a decision. We can't do something we don't think about at first. Even impulse decisions still go through this mental map process I'm going to be talking about. We have a starting point, and it's going to naturally begin to branch off in different directions, different pathways, depending on what the decision we're trying to make. And it creates this. But now I want you to kind of imagine a more complex decision or an important decision that you're going to have to make. It is going to be a lot more congested like this. And it can get even bigger, especially if it's going to be very, very important to you or life-changing to you. But now I want you to view this more congested mental map and kind of imagine that you're going through some stress or you have some reduced mental clarity. It's going to be really hard to navigate that complicated mental map and have a level of creativity that you need in order to even reach that decision in the first place. And not only that, when you're stressed, under a lot of stress, it's really easy to miss important information in order for you to arrive to your decision. So a really good example of how stress can make you oblivious to this simple detail is this right here. So recently I rejected a permission code request, and I let them know that they did it for the wrong course. So this is a message that the student will see, and they see the title of the course that they submitted that request for in the section. So I let them know that they did the wrong course. They needed programming for all 2, and they did it for the course they're in, which is programming for all 1. Overnight, they got so upset, they sent me this email, didn't even wait to get a response. They submitted a new permission code request saying, basically, Colleen, why did you do this to me? I was told to do a permission code request. You're not letting me go through my major. And they were so upset. And it was right there in front of them where they saw the reason that it was denied. It's because they simply just did the wrong course. So if they had looked up, they would have seen why, which is why I just kind of said it was an incorrect course, because they knew the title was going to be there. But he was so upset that he missed it. So kind of imagining that happening for every little thing in your life or a huge decision when you're super stressed out, how are you going to make the right decision for you to overcome any issues or just take an opportunity to pursue something? So I'm just going to revert back to the nap time so you can kind of continue to see what a standard mental map will look like. But once people or students are under some stress and they have to make a decision that's connected to a trauma that they're experiencing, there are 3 paths that they take in that journey. The first one is that they're just going to be circling around the question in the first place. So in this case, it was, If I'm stressed out about taking a nap, I'm going to keep circling around, do I want to take a nap forever and never progress? The next one is going to be just kind of going down every negative consequence that could happen if I have to reach a decision, thus never making the decision happen, but always staying in this grim reality that's hard to get out of. And the third path is literally called third path. And that leads people from failure or setback and emerge stronger than they were when they thought or started this decision-making process. And this third path is hidden a lot with students that are, or just people that are stressed out. So our goal is to help expose this third path so they can make that decision in that trying time and overcome it and start thinking positively again. So now when I say trauma, this can be an endless amount of things. It does not have to be a severe event. It can include failure, obstacles, and just disappointment. While traumas are encountered throughout our lives, I thought those three really called out to students that I work with, especially in STEM. They're always nervous that one small thing is gonna fail them, or they're disappointed by the slightest thing. So it's a common conversation that we have to try to overcome that. So these traumas do trip people and we fall down, and that's going to be inevitable. But what can we do to instead reverse that and fall up? And we can do that a few different ways. The first one I have down here is learn your ABCDs. ABCDs. Yeah, ABCDs. And that is adversity is that event that we can't change. Like something happened and there's nothing we can do about it. B for belief. The belief is our thoughts or reaction to that event, how to recover from it, reflections, things like that. A consequence is going to be a positive and a negative. So if you have a negative or pessimistic belief associated with that event that you can't change, the consequence of that event or that decision regarding that is also going to be pessimistic. So in a little bit, we'll talk about some positivities to kind of spin that better. And then disputation. And that's going to be the first thought that that individual has, that their belief is challengeable. So if they are thinking that they're like in a pessimistic way, that first thought of, oh wait, is it really like this? And that's what that step is in the ABCDs. I can't say that apparently, ABCDs. So you want to take those ABCDs and you want to create make your crisis a catalyst for opportunity. And there's a couple ways you can do that. Change your counterfact. And a counterfact is an alternate scenario that we create to help evaluate or make sense of something that had just happened, so the adversity that was experienced. But because this counterfact is invented by us, we are able to consciously select a more positive counterfact than usual and make us feel fortunate rather than continue on experiencing helplessness connected to that adversity. An example of a counterfact could be like, here's the scenario. You go to a store and you park your car, there's other cars there, you go in really quick to store, you come out and Godzilla and King Kong are kind of having a battle. All of a sudden, as soon as you step out, and it's epic, it's great. But Godzilla falls down onto your car and crashes it, and it's just your car. After that, he gets a boo-boo and starts crying. So King Kong is like, we shouldn't fight, my friend. And they agree. And they hug, get some pizza, and they leave. And you're just flabbergasted that your car is destroyed. Nothing else bad has happened around you. So how do you react to that? A negative counterfact can be, oh man, why was I even here? I left my phone in the car, that's much, now my insurance are gonna go up, how come they landed on my car? But a more positive way to think about that is, I'm really happy no one was in the car waiting for me to go in. I'm glad that no other damage was done to people. I'm just glad my loved ones are safe and I'm not hurt. I'm glad I wasn't in the car and get smushed by a Godzilla falling on it. So the event itself hasn't changed. It's the way that we're interpreting or reflecting on that is going to be really important. The next one is changing your, I can't ever say this word either, explanatory style. It's a more positive way of interpreting adversity. And so if you tackle that negative event more positively and you are able to start that with students sooner rather than later, as they're experiencing different traumas throughout their education, they're going to be able to learn or find that third path for them a lot faster or not at all. And so it's really easy to start implementing this as soon as you can with struggling students or students just struggling for the first time or something happened. So I guess a good one is if students, there's an exam coming up or a midterm and you don't think they're going to do well, and you talk about it, you give them all the tools that they need, they follow through and all that, but they still don't do well. And because they don't do well, it's also going to impact how they're doing in that course. That might impact, depending on what that is, their ability to then progress further into the major or have a major delay. There's a few different ways you can talk about that. You can focus on the negatives, or you can focus on the positives. Like, hell yeah, you did everything you needed to do. You found something that does work for you, and you did better than what you thought was going to be. So let's continue this momentum. And that way you can introduce that student, and you'll know that is a temporary situation instead of a permanent one, that they can overcome it just fine. And is there another way that you talk to students that helps with a more positive explanatory style?
Yeah, it's sort of building off what you were saying, Colleen, is that like if a student comes in and they're like, I failed an exam, I'm always like, oh, of course you did. Like, everybody fails exams. Like, great. It's great that you failed, especially with the first year students. Excuse me, like a lot of our first year students are in chemistry, and I'm like, of course you didn't do well in chemistry. None of our students do well in chemistry. I mean, that's not true, but you know, I think that's helpful to show them like normalizing their failure a little bit, and because then it gives them the opportunity to, like you said, like change their counterfact of like, oh, well, it's good that I failed this first exam because now I can learn from it, and it's good that I did this early on my program because now I can apply all of the changes to the rest of my program and rest of my study style. So it's good that you have those, like seeing that failure as an opportunity early on and then being able to change it. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I will now talk about Principle 5, which is the Zorro Circle. So if you've ever seen the Zorro movie, which hopefully you have, if you haven't, Netflix it, rent it, it's problematic and also good. The one thing that happens to Zorro in the beginning is when he's training to become Zorro, the superhero, his trainer says, stands him in a circle, draws a line in the sand, so he's just standing right in a circle, and says the circle will be your whole world, your whole life, until I tell you otherwise. There's nothing outside of it. And so when Zorro is training, he trains just to defend himself in the circle, and then the circle gets a little bit bigger, and then it gets a little bit bigger, and then it gets a little bit bigger, and then he's able to become the superhero. Is Zorro a superhero? I'm not exactly sure, that he wants to become. So this principle is all about doing that. The most successful people have an internal locus of control. You've probably heard of that before. It's the belief that their actions have a direct effect on their outcomes. So, and how you can build that internal locus of control is drawing that circle for yourself and for your students, and helping you see what can you control, how can you impact your little circle, how can you sort of, take over that little circle, take responsibility of that little circle, and then you can expand that circle to be bigger and bigger. This is also helpful for limiting the scope of your efforts, right? So as a student, you don't have control over what your faculty does, what your classmates do, what people on your group project do. You only have control over what you do. Same for advisors. If you're on a campus-wide committee or you're on a team of advisors, don't let yourself be frustrated by anything that the campus is doing. Don't try and fix the entire campus. Focus on what you can do, and that will have a ripple effect outwards. So one example he uses in the book is of somebody who works as a copy editor at this huge marketing firm. She's just really frustrated with how everything is going at the firm. And he says, instead of trying to fix everything at this company, just focus on your own copy editing. So she works really hard with herself and her team to make sure that they are the best team. And because their copy and their writing becomes so much better, the graphic design team is like, oh, we want to give them really excellent graphics. And so they do a better job. The positivity from her team spills over to them, and then it just continues to bubble up. And in the end, the company ended up doing a lot better than they had in the past. Okay, so how can you apply this? How can you set your own circle, build your own internal locus of control, and help your students build that as well? Okay, first thing you do, you can do this with yourself and with your students. If a student is in your office and they're like, I am so stressed out about this exam that's coming up or my group project, I just cannot get my team to contribute and blah, 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 have them write down all of the stressors that are going on regarding that project. If you're stressed out about something, write all of them down and then sort them into ones that you can control and those that you cannot control. Once you do that, set goals around the things that you actually can control, right? So just like the copy editor, she cannot control what the graphic design team does. She can only control what her team does and what copy like she writes for her team. So if you're working on a big, large committee, right? You know, you cannot control everybody else on the committee getting their things done. You can only control what things that you can get done. So make sure that you're just focusing on things you can do and set goals around the specific things that you can do. Set small and manageable goals. Make sure they are moderately difficult. So if you're on the committee and you volunteered for 2 tasks, set goals to make sure that you're going to achieve those tasks. You're going to do a great job at those tasks. You're going to have them on time. When you come to your next committee meeting, you're going to have an excellent report. You can report that right back out. If you have an excellent report, people are going to start to feel pressure that they should also have excellent reports. And so they will start to do a better job as well, hopefully. And hopefully it will spill over and then the committee will start to do better overall. Can do this with students as well. So they cannot control things that people are doing in their group projects. So say, okay, what can you control? How can you make sure that you are contributing and doing a great job on your team? They can set those goals for that. And then hopefully that will encourage the other students to continue to meet that level, that standard. And that is the Zorro circle.
Perfect. I'm ready to keep on going. I'm just going to keep on going so we can get to all 7.
Yep.
We all really want to get some great habits down, but we have a difficult time developing good habits. And that's because our days are filled with so many tasks, whether it's student appointments, back-to-back meetings, they have a whole bunch of assignments to do if they're students, followed by more meetings and emails. Our willpower gets spent throughout the day. It wears out the more it uses until it completely dissipates. So that also comes from the same energy that we use to try to build some habits. So if it's already spent, by the time we're trying to develop that new habit, we're not going to be able to have the energy to actually follow through and get it to be something that we're wanting to do. But also we have issues at breaking bad habits. I know I have bad habits all the time. It's called distraction. So I'm going to go all the way over to the next slide already. Let's just go and talk about that. It mentions activation energy on the application page. There we go. And that's essentially the effort, the energy that you are using to do a task. So if our willpower and the energy that we're using to create a habit come from the same source, we need to reduce the effort associated with developing a good or a new habit to make you happier and do it easier, while increasing the effort associated with a habit that you want to break. So some ways that you can do that, let's say that a student is really needing some guidance on how to study effectively. The Learning Center at your institution is always a great resource to go talk to because they have learning specialists, they have resources. But if you know of any as well, I use the 5-day study plan for students needing some additional guidance on how to make a good habit of studying. So it really helps outline how to approach studying, the time it takes, mental fatigue, and it outlines it exactly for them, and it starts creating how to navigate studying without necessarily doing the 5-day study plan forever. If it's you, if you want to feel good as yourself and you want to be more active, like I need to be more active so I stop hurting myself, I never want to do anything in the morning, so maybe I should probably wear my workout clothes to bed. Put the gym bag right next in arm's reach of my bed, so as soon as that alarm goes off, I literally just have to roll out and I don't have to expend additional energy in order to do that. But if you're having a bad habit that you're wanting to break, and this goes for students and advisors alike, I get distracted a lot. I have 2 monitors, I have 2 different emails set up right here. different sounds came up on the presentation, and it tripped me up, and you guys saw me like rethink things for a bit, and I got distracted. So a good way to kind of help that, there are plenty of different distraction apps that you can do depending on what your weakness is that you're wanting to break. You want to make it more difficult for you to actually do that thing that you just kind of fall into without thinking. So breaking out any apps or programs, plugins for your browsers to prevent you from accessing websites or certain programs, or even making your email harder to access if you really need to focus on a task, can be very helpful. So you really just want to save yourself that 20 seconds, which is the name of this principle is, for the effort that you want to do for a positive task, so you want to do it more, but also cost yourself an additional 20 seconds to break a bad habit that you do not want to have anymore. And I'm going to let Katie go into the final principle while we still can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So principle 7 is the social advantage. And this is about relying on your social support as the main way to get through adversity. A lot of times if people are struggling, sometimes they sort of hunker down and they try and fix things just by themselves. Or if our students are getting stressed out, the first thing they cut out is like, okay, I can't go to that soccer game and hang out with my friends. Okay, I can't go to that movie night. And I have to study. That's actually really counterproductive because they need that social support to boost their positivity and to help their brain work and recognize opportunities. So social support is a far greater predictor of happiness than any other factor, and it does not need to be deep to be effective. Sometimes we think, okay, we got to have like a really deep one-on-one to get that really good social interaction, but just grabbing coffee with a friend is enough, or chit-chatting with somebody prior to a meeting is a great option. So how can you make this happen? First, commit to frequent and positive social interactions. Make sure that you have time to do it. Make sure that your students are doing it. So if they're getting really stressed out about an exam, ask them, okay, how are you going to spend 30 minutes and hang out with somebody who really brings you joy? Respond to good news actively and constructively. If students are sharing good news in your office or friends are sharing good news with you, make sure you're actually engaging in that good news. So respond directly to the news, and then constructively, that just means like engage with a question. So somebody says, you know, a student comes in your office, they say, I got a 95% on my exam. You say, gosh, that's fantastic. What questions did you do really well on? Or which parts are you the most proud of? Just asking them a question to get them to be able to share more about their news. And then build in space and time for social connection to develop. So if you oversee teams, make sure that you're giving teams opportunity to be able to chit chat. If you teach a class, make sure you have opportunities in your class for your students to all engage with each other. Do this with your students, right? So chit chat with your students at the beginning of the meeting, right? Don't let them jump right into, okay, I have questions about my course schedule. Make sure you're asking them questions so that they can think about themselves. Okay, Colleen, we've got 1 minute left.
I was trying to try for your email so they can get access to our presentation. So the ripple effect is essentially saying that all these principles do work together. The Tetris effect, which is number 3, fuels following up. Developing a strong social support system will fuel that good habit building, because you need to have a strong support system to hold you accountable to either breaking those bad habits or keeping those bad habits. But also our emotions are contagious. So if you're positive, people around you will be positive. If you're negative, people around you tend to be more negative. So as we're going through this journey, we just want to be hyper aware of how our moods impact people. And of course, this is self-explanatory. I'm not going to go into it. Every big wave starts small. Like, start off small. You're not going to see a change immediately. It's not going to be a 180. So give yourself some time and enjoy finding your happiness advantage. And I think I'm going to cut it off.
Okay. Colleen put our email in the chats. We obviously don't have time for discussion. Also, with the 1 minute delay, it'd be a little hard to do a discussion. I don't know if we can hang out and answer some of your questions in the chat. If possible, you can go ahead and type some questions in the chat. It doesn't look like we have any now, but go ahead and put them in the chat, and we will either hang out and answer them, or if we get cut off, sorry, you can email us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yay.
Yay. Yeah, so there is a 1 minute delay. So We won't know if you typed any questions. So let's see what we want to do. Kim or Michelle, could you let us know if we're going to get cut off or if we can hang out for the next we can hang out for the next few minutes. Okay, yes, we can definitely hang out. So if you have any chats, questions, please put them in the chats. And we will, I'm just going over the Q&A to look and see if there are any new questions. Colleen, were there any like strategies or tricks that we did not talk about that you want to share as like final, like, hey, by the way, this is one thing that we did not talk about that we think is really cool?
We did not talk about that's really cool.
I
try to focus on what I got out of it. So I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
Like for me, the making habits and the whole, basically all of. Sorry, another one popped up. Just trying to get myself to be more positive and also use that positivity to best support a good habit or breaking a bad habit. And my negativity is a bad habit. So I think it goes into so many different aspects of positivity and success and how we can apply it in our lives. But I really do think that they are truly intertwined with each other. Like you can't just focus on principle 4 filling up without integrating aspects from different ones. So I always thought that was really cool and that we really didn't get to mention very well in this. So thank you for my rambling for that one. But how do you feel about how they work together? Were there combinations that really connected with you and how you are as an individual?
Yeah, I thought I like loved the 20-second thing, especially for me for breaking bad habits, is thinking about like how can I build in 20-second barriers for myself. And like that feeds directly into the one that I was saying about like writing down 3 good things that happen to you every day, right? If you can like combine those 2 together, then you're going to become a powerhouse person. You'll actually be able to implement the things. It looks like there was only one question in the chat about the PowerPoint. Yes, you can definitely email us. We don't have access to it. It just says anonymous, so we can't email them to you. But if you email us, we will send you a copy of the PowerPoint. We're happy to share it.
Yeah, I think we just need a guest view for it, and that's it.
Just print it as a PDF, and there you go. Yeah, if any other questions, keep them rolling. We will try and answer them.
Have about a minute. So if you guys want to connect, if you want to talk more about it, just in general, you can definitely connect with us through emails. That way we can have a more meaningful discussion, since we can't really interact with you very well right now. So we do really appreciate that you all came, and some of you hung around a bit more, and I'm really stoked on that. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. The one last tip I have that we did not cover is, which we talked a little bit about, I think, Colleen, is when you're doing the disputing. How do you dispute yourself if you're in that like negative spiral, the falling down and not the falling up? A trick I use is the truth is. So you can use it with yourself or with your students. If you're in this sort of negative spiral, just say like, okay, finish the sentence. The truth is, blank, because then it helps you from over exaggerating or saying like, okay, this is terrible and this is terrible and then this will happen and then this will happen and this person's definitely doing this or X, Y, and Z. But if you just like settle down and say the truth is blank, that's a good trick for disputing things. So
that's a good point. Thank you so much for including that, because I did not talk about that whatsoever.
Obviously we didn't have time to talk about everything because we were over time.
That's a lot.
Yeah, both are chatters. Okay, so thank you so much for coming. I think we're going to call it, and Michelle's going to go ahead and shut it off. We really appreciated you all being here. Email us with any of your thoughts and questions. We'd love to hear from you. If you want the PowerPoint, definitely let us know. We are happy to share.
Yes. Have a great week.